You listen to Summer Valley 97.5 FM, and in this programme we're looking at the current state of libraries. One of the things that I was interested in doing for this feature was looking into community-run library services. The government have been giving out grants to these community-run libraries, and they've been quite controversial. Some people think they're workable, they're ways that a library can adapt in these current times, while others think it's a way for councils to simply offload services and save money. Within Somerset, 3 libraries were given up to community use. These were Porlock, Bruton and Bishop's Lydiard. Although these libraries aren't currently volunteer run, they will be by the end of the year, as funding will be cut in October. Firstly, I asked Lauren Smith from Voices for the Library what she thought of these volunteer-run community libraries.
These are very problematic for me for many reasons. One of the things we're seeing is that staff are being made redundant and are then being asked to go back to work for free for the same service, to apply the skills that they worked hard for years to develop. And to do this is so insulting, and also will inevitably result in a decline in the service even further, because that isn't something that's sustainable. These volunteers will not always be able to put in the amount of work that they might need to do to keep something going. You can never place demands on volunteers in the way that you can on paid staff, and nor should you. But volunteers also cause problems, particularly for libraries, because a lot of what libraries do involves computer systems that you need to sign up to data protection aspects, and you need to have CRB checks and all this kind of thing to be working with vulnerable groups, children, and people in communities. So this all creates a lot of problems in terms of cost of organising, cost of time in planning and sorting all the arrangements out. It's incredibly difficult to do. There's a gentleman who runs a library in Chalfont St Giles who said that it takes 60 to 70 members of staff on his rota, and it takes an awful lot of time to organise who's going to be working when and how to create a sustainable service. It's just too much, I think, for many communities to do, because not all communities have retired people living in them who have worked at management level for a number of years, who have the skills to do something that is quite complex, because it's far more than just putting books back on shelves and giving them to people when they want to borrow them.
You're saying it's not sustainable. Do you mean in terms of government grants might be cut in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Any money that's available now is not guaranteed to be available in the future. It takes a lot of investment. It's an ongoing thing. You can't say, here is X amount of money, off you go, live on that for a few years, because it's very unclear as to where the money's going to be coming from. And if this money is available for volunteers, then why isn't it available for paid qualified staff? And it may well be more cost-effective to be running a proper service with paid staff.
Given Catherine White the example of another neighbouring council, Gloucestershire Council, who were in the process of offloading 11 of their libraries, I asked her what her opinion was on the community-run libraries.
Well, I think that if Gloucestershire County Council are trying to offload 11 of their libraries to the public, then I think that the Gloucestershire communities should actually pay at least 50% of their council tax and withhold the other 50% for the libraries that they now have to run. Because that is what's happening. The councils are offloading services to the local community, and yet they are putting the council taxes up. And these council taxes are supposed to be to provide our services. Where is it going to stop? We start with our libraries. Are we going to now start having to take our bins down to a local refuse centre in our cars so that the council don't have to bother emptying our bins because they can't afford it? I mean, it is actually a farce that the council should suggest that we start to run public services. And I think that once they start offloading these services onto the public should withhold funds from the council.
Well, in the previous interview I'd done on the subject with a spokeswoman from Voices for the Library, she reckoned that the volunteer system isn't sustainable because governments would give grants out to volunteer-run libraries, but they're not sustainable.
Well, absolutely. And they talk about volunteer-run libraries. The current economic climate is putting more and more families under pressure. Who has got the time, without being paid, to run a library service when our local councils are being paid to run a library service and they're not doing it? Families have to find work. They have to sort of hold the whole the whole thing together. They have to take their children to school. They have to provide for their children. They cannot do this while they're trying to provide public services that the councils are refusing to give. It's completely unacceptable. And whilst the government goes on about, everybody pulling together, well, it strikes me that the people in the local authorities are actually pulling away from communities, and they're not contributing to the good of the community. So, no, I think it is completely unacceptable that local authorities are expecting volunteers to run libraries when people are actually fighting to keep their jobs and keep their homes intact. And the local authorities are being paid to do it, and they're not living up to their responsibilities.